Mriting Wonday, episode 6.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
New mics.
New mics.
New mics.
We have something new about our set every new episode.
Yes.
I was actually thinking about just having me in a different location every time, because you was always you at your desk, and then it would shift from where I was.
Yeah.
Do one where I'm on the floor.
I think we've already had 2 where you had the closet at your back, though. And we've already settled into that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It's a good one.
Welcome to Mriting Wonday, episode 6.
Wow. We've done some episodes, man.
We've done a couple of them, yeah.
We're doing it.
It's been done.
It's been done. This one is a different kind of done that we did in the different type of topic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We gave each other 3 movies that we've already seen, but we wanted the other person to see for one reason or another. We didn't really say why yet, so we'll go through that.
Yeah, and that reason could be anything.
Yeah, it could be.
Be it that it was such a bad movie that Jason wanted me to suffer through it, so he made me watch a bad movie.
Yes.
And I just gave Jason ones that I think that he should see because they're good.
Do you think I did one that was just a bad movie? Like I wanted you to see it because it's a bad movie?
But not... I don't think that you did it out of spite, but I think that you wanted me to watch it so I could agree with you how bad it was.
I guess we'll have to talk about which one it is. Okay. Do we want to go do a swap back and forth again like this? Or do you want to go through the journeys?
Yeah.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with your first. Well, how are you going to do it? Because I'm going to present mine in order how I watched.
Me too.
Okay.
Number 1. Jason had me watch this movie called Call Me By Your Name.
Okay. Yes.
That doesn't make any sense. It's very confusing to call somebody else by your name. If everyone did that...
I mean, it's supposed to be romantic, but I don't know how yet.
I don't want to call my partner by my name.
No.
I don't like that.
No. This movie, from my understanding, before I even watched it, it was being talked about a lot. It was a very talked about, very big movie, very big deal. I think it might have even either been nominated or won some awards.
I could see that.
And then someone finally talked me into watching it. And I did want to see it because just from the word of mouth and stuff.
Yeah.
So tell me what you thought and how it went.
So this one I wrote the most about.
Interesting.
See? For all you audio podcast listeners.
Also, I have a sword.
Oh yeah, Jason's holding a sword. Call Me By Your Name was this movie. I'll give a little backstory. It's this movie about it's a coming of age story. He's living with his family in...
It's also a coming in peaches story.
Spoilers. It's a coming of age story about a young boy who's like learning about his sexuality, and spoiler alert, he's gay, and he's figuring it out.
Where does it take place?
Italy.
Again? In Italy.
It's in Italy in the 80s.
He's an American.
In 1983. He is an American, but like his family has like a summer home there or something, and like he's fluent in Italian, and like
they're no stranger to that area.
Yeah, they've been living there for a long
Especially
time,
the dad.
like every summer or whatever. Yeah, and the dad works out there, I think is what it is, and every summer actually they may live there all the time because they're in the winter too. They may just live there.
Yeah, but I got the impression from remembering is that they get there for a project, like a project with the dad is starting, right?
They bring in a research assistant every summer, and the research assistant for this summer is this man named Oliver. And the boy and the man named Oliver have what I think is a not super healthy relationship.
Me neither.
And that's my problem with the movie.
Yes.
Is that this is a coming-of-age story about a 17-year-old boy who falls for this 24-year-old man.
Were those the ages for sure?
Yeah, they're 7 years apart, and this kid is 17.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, the person who wrote the book the movie was based on probably had a similar experience.
Well, I've heard from discourse of this movie is like, this is often a lot of gay teens awakenings
Yes.
is with older people of that.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing.
No, and the movie presents it as a good thing.
Right.
So I wrote down my thoughts as the movie was playing. Okay, with one exception, I moved one note to the top of the list because I felt like it would make a good subtitle for the movie.
It sounds, before you do it, it sounds like you did some research about the movie after the fact.
Very little.
A little bit.
Very little.
Because from my understanding as well, something not content-based, but just feeling-based about the movie that I didn't like at first, and then learned later that the scenes were improvised. And it was kind of like loose, and like, I just want these two actors to really, I just want to roll on them and feel how they're feeling about it. So like,
Okay.
a lot of it wasn't fully scripted, and I'm looking back on some scenes where I'm like, oh, that's why it felt so weirdly paced, is because
Yes.
it wasn't paced, you know? So that is
That means it was
That
poorly
doesn't-
edited.
that, yeah, but it does. That's not what
My
the
opinion.
my biggest issues is the content.
Yes, I agree.
So go.
So yeah, just a quick reminder. This is the first one is this what I think the subtitle of the movie should be, and then the rest are my thoughts in order as I had them. So here we go. Call Me by Your Name, a movie about apricots that make you gay.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of symbolism in the movie with these apricots. There's an apricot tree that is growing on their farm or their house,
Their property.
on their property or whatever. And I felt like the apricots were like symbolic of gayness, of learning about your sexuality, something like that. There's definitely something with fruits in this movie, I'll tell you that. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. Something with literal fruit. And then later in the movie, we find out that there's like this gay couple that comes to visit them, like an older gay couple that's like a friend of the, like friends of the family or whatever. And these two guys show up in their little Italian car, and they're dressed nice, and they're very much like older gay men. And we learn that they, I believe, gave them the apricot tree. And so that's when I was like, I think that there's some like clear symbolism around this. Also, just like the color, the use of color with the apricots, they're like bright yellow apricots standing out on like a background of all the green trees and stuff like that. It's like very, they're drawing your eye
Clock
to the
that it's a
apricot.
reference, but you don't know for sure how you feel about it.
I just don't know what it's saying. Like, okay, apricots represent budding sexuality or something, specifically budding gay sexuality. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But maybe we're not the right guys to have this discussion.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a more of a in community thing, that if we were more aware of like references to something about in that regard.
Right. And maybe it's not. And maybe it could just be something where in this particular movie they use that as a symbol to drive a point home that I
Yeah, maybe
didn't
it's a
get.
forbidden fruit thing.
Maybe. Yeah.
You know, in the Bible way. You know, the
Sure,
way
yeah.
God intended. No.
Okay, next. Opening credits are so stylized I couldn't read them.
I don't remember that.
It's not a real criticism against the movie, but like the opening credits have like yellow cursive on a background of like intricate statues, and I'm like, I can't read any of these. I don't know who any of these people are in this movie.
Opening credits at the beginning of the movie. Cinema Sin.
And yeah. Anyways, next, Bikeable City. They ride bikes all over in this city, and it's a very small little like Italian countryside, and yet they can get around.
The atmosphere is awesome.
The atmosphere is awesome, and it's because it's so bikeable.
Yeah. That's like you've said that you think like 60% of Pokemon fans just wish that they lived in a bikeable city, and that's
Yes.
the fantasy. Or
Yes.
RPGs in general.
Number 4, lots of shirtless men. Now, remind you, I didn't know anything about this movie going in, so I didn't know why there were so many shirtless men at first.
Yeah.
The next point
It
I
takes
wrote
a second
down,
for the movie to even like
Yes. It starts
it
with-
buries the lead at first.
it starts with the kid waking up in bed with a girl.
Right.
So it starts with that.
Yeah. And like lots of scenes of him running around with her trying to find places to hook up and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, there
so-
is a girl. He loses his virginity to a woman,
Right.
To another girl his age in this movie.
Yeah.
And it clearly seems as though he cares for her, but at the same time he just like is doing it because he wants to. This is just what you do.
It's the right yeah.
Yeah, and she's into him. So it's like, oh yeah, obviously I should have sex with this girl to bury down my true feelings for men.
Right.
Or this one man at least. But anyway, so the first thing I wrote was lots of shirtless men, and then right after that I wrote, oh, it's a gay movie. And I got it. I was like, there's a lot of shirtless men in this movie, and they got a lot of short shorts. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. After that, I wrote maybe even a little molesty. Because when I started to realize that, at first it was like, this kid is looking at that man in a way where I'm thinking, oh, he's like, wow, this is a hot guy that my dad has staying with us.
Yeah.
And they have, like, they share 2 rooms that are conjoined by a bathroom. So they can, like, see each other, and it's very intimate. It's very intimate, and I think inappropriate. Like, the kid doesn't realize that that's, like, an inappropriate thing, obviously, but that 24-year-old man should know that young boy in the conjoining room, close the door, stop changing in front of him, and peeing with the door open. Like, he does all that kind of stuff, and it's very much like, for the kid, that's just like...
Yeah, it's inappropriate to have a house guest that changes and pees in front of the host's child.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. They're just like, you can stay with my son. You know, it's like a weird...
Yes.
It's just weird to, get like an older host with your young kid in general.
Yeah.
Just,
and he's not that old. But
no, you're right.
7 years
He
his
comes
senior.
Across as older.
He comes across as a lot older.
I didn't
than he is.
realize
I had to look
24.
up the age. That's the age in the
not...
book. The ages in the book is 17 and 24.
Yeah.
But I think that's supposed to be true in the movie as well. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on. What's with the fish?
What's with the chimp and the bug?
There's a scene where this like, I don't know if he's like their groundskeeper or just an old man from the neighborhood, like comes out of the...
Every neighborhood's got one.
Yeah, he's just like comes out of the woods with this giant fish, and it's like still alive, and he like runs in, and then there's like a close up where the kid is Elio is his name, the main character, is looking at the fish. It gets like really close, and the fish is like opening and closing its mouth slowly because it's a fish out of water or whatever. Right. And then the kid like looks up close to it, and like he does that with his mouth too for like a few seconds, and then the guy like goes and gives the fish to the mom, and she like goes off to cook it or whatever. And I was like, I don't know what that was.
What happens after that?
Other stuff that just they don't.
Maybe
don't
he was
really
learning how to suck dick by the fish.
Oh, that must be it. And then I was like, maybe it's like a fish out of water story. It's not. No. That's not how I would describe that story, though.
No, you get that just the way it's described. I don't remember that scene. It's so weird. I don't remember that.
It's just a little bit
because you get the vibe that you're like, okay, he's relating to the fish somehow.
Yes.
Is he relating to the helplessness, not being able to breathe? Maybe like, I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know, but it definitely, it's like that and the apricots both stood out to me as something where like I can tell that the filmmaker is trying to tell me something, but it's not getting across. I don't know what you're saying.
If you as an audience member like see that what we're missing and you just know so much more, tell us.
Yeah, let me know.
Because we wanna get as much knowledge as possible.
There's a really cool oneer where Elio comes out to Oliver, and I'm wondering if this scene was improvised.
Are they at like the square?
Yep.
And they're like running. That's the scene that I remember. Maybe it was just one scene.
It's like at least 2 or 3 or maybe even up to 5 minutes long. It is a oneer.
Yeah. And
it's just the camera slowly pans from left to right all the way up to a church, like a cross on top of a church, and then back down the other way. And the characters are talking through this whole scene, and there's a fountain in the middle, and they're like, one of them's on one side of the fountain, one's on the other. And it's this very long, drawn out, like, they're like trying to say what they want to say without actually saying it, because this is when Elio comes out to Oliver. And I thought that was a really cool scene.
Yeah, because
it is poorly paced, though, you're right.
For entertainment purposes, but like it does give the feeling of like when you want to tell somebody something, but you also I'm not sure if you want to say it.
He looks up to a cross on a church, but both of them are Jewish. They make a note to say that they're Jewish, and like one of them has like a Star of David necklace. So it's really weird to me that they're like calling attention to this symbolism. Church. I know that they're the only Jewish people in the area like that is like it's not like they're from like a Jewish community because
Yeah,
they're
it's Italy of all places.
So it's like maybe that's why, just because they're like, oh, this is like a different religious symbol. But that just felt like an odd choice to me to make a kind of a big deal about the cross, but then at the same time, it's
Never thought about
the
that.
characters are overtly Jewish. That's a thing that they talk about. Anyways, at some point I wrote, "Oh, the shame! They're ashamed. That's fucked up."
That they
I
were
didn't
ashamed of
realize
being
that that's
gay.
what was happening, and that's when I realized, oh yeah, it's the 80s. I
Yeah.
forgot that it was the 80s, because like it's already like in another country, and they're
Yeah, so
like-
anything that feels a little dated feels maybe just foreign or something.
exactly yeah. Next, there was a shot where he gets a nosebleed, but in another shot, the bleeding is coming through a different nostril. Bad movie.
Yeah, bad movie. Ding, sin.
Next, there are topless women in this movie, but no one hangs dong.
Yeah,
And that's wrong.
That
That's
is wrong.
homophobic.
Of course it is.
I know I'm doing a bit, but unironically, it is
Yeah.
weird that happens in movies all the time, where they're like, put some topless women in.
Yeah, I mean, you
And
have
I'm
a
gonna
movie
talk about another movie
about
after this.
gay people, about being like learning about yourself. You have no problem, like I don't know. That could be studio meddling. That could be the still being a little uncomfortable about the subject matter, even though you're making a movie about it.
Yeah.
Even if the people that made it are gay, maybe still being afraid of going too far in that direction. I don't know, but it's very very apparent in a lot of things. I always get a little like I always want to applaud a little bit when I see some dong in a movie, because it's
Me
just
too.
you never see it.
Because you don't see it, and you should.
Yeah.
Like, that should be more normal.
Yeah, that's why we got to talk more about tiptoes.
Oh, no.
Because there's dong and tiptoes.
Is there really?
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey just gets out of bed, walks across the room, and he's naked the whole time, and you're just like, didn't need that, but fuck yeah.
It's really funny. Next point, all caps. The apricots make you gay.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Next, I don't get the blowjob scene.
Which one is
There's
that?
a scene where they both go. So at a certain point in the movie, they do like start to hook up, but then like he goes and loses his virginity to the girl, and then they get back together and whatever. And like they're constantly doing like a will they won't they, because they're like, it's wrong, but we're so in love, even though he's much older. And there's a scene where
Honestly, all of that makes it hotter.
they both go into their respective rooms, and then the old guy starts giving a blowjob to the younger kid, which is what's happening. I hate saying those words. That makes me feel gross, but that's what happens. He gives him a blowjob for like 10 seconds, and then he says, "That's promising. You're hard again." And that made me uncomfortable. I don't understand. And I was like, maybe they are going to talk about how this is a man and a boy.
Yeah. Because that feels so predatory, and,
right?
Yeah, and like grooming and being like, I'll open you up to this, like, oh yeah, you are promising for my experiences,
right? It's uncomfortable. So then after that is the peach scene.
Right after that, or I mean, like just
sometime
in your
after
notes?
that,
Okay.
in my notes.
Yeah.
Basically,
God, it's such a hard scene to watch.
yeah, they have sex, and sometime after that, the kid is alone in bed, and I don't know how much I want to go into detail about this.
I'll do it.
Okay, do it.
Someone tells him or like gives him the tip earlier, kind of like a American Pie scenario, that you can like jerk off and use the apricots.
I did not know that.
And so
I must have missed that one.
He masturbates and finishes inside the apricot.
It's a peach.
Or the peach. Yeah, he finishes inside the peach. And then the older guy comes, not actually, he shows up in the room and is like, oh, I know what you've been doing.
And the kid's like super ashamed about it.
Super uncomfortable.
And he like, gets really mad, and he like kind of like starts crying a little bit. And he's like, stop like picking on me about this shameful thing I did.
Yeah. And then
the guy's like, ooh, that's hot.
Yeah, he's like,
I want to eat the
playing
peach.
and teasing him. And then he does eat the peach.
He like goes to take a bite out of it, and then the kid like tackles him. And he's like, stop it, whatever.
I thought
then
he took a bite of the peach.
I mean, he does, but like,
yeah.
And then he like pushes him, and then they like embrace, and he like cries into his arms or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know, man. More every single scene, every single like sexual encounter, which I guess in a way with like a coming of age story about somebody finding their sexuality, that's like another stepping stone in this.
Yeah.
On that journey. every single step, I'm like, this just is further reinforcing that I think that it probably should be ultimately viewed as a bad thing.
Yeah, he pushed that kid in that scene. He was clearly uncomfortable, crying to a point. It didn't stop him from pushing it further, trying, kind of like purposely making him more uncomfortable. And then it gives to me the feeling that like you're gonna be so uncomfortable, and then you're gonna realize the only person you can come to is me. You know what I mean? And that's a grooming.
It's like we're watching
pattern,
him groom this kid.
You know, and it's the kid is distraught in that scene, and it's not great.
After that, there's a scene where they go, or there's a small amount of time in the movie where it's like the summer is coming to an end, and Oliver has to go away to like another city nearby. They're like an hour away, let's say, by car. And so he's like, oh, hey, to the parents, he's like, what if I take Elio with me?
Yeah.
And the parents are like, cool.
Yeah. Why again? Why do you want to take our son?
Because they're friends.
Yeah.
So then that happens. The parents are like, yeah, go have fun. And then for like a week or whatever, they're in this other place. And then Oliver and Elio go out drinking, or he gets him drunk, or I don't know what the age limit, the drinking limit's probably 18 or whatever, in Italy in the 80s. I have no idea. Yeah. But so they're drunk, and they're like wandering around in the city. And then there's a point where Elio is so drunk that he pukes. And then immediately after that, there's an out-of-focus shot of them kissing.
Ew, puke mouth.
I mean, yeah, but also, like, he's not kissing a drunk young boy.
Yep.
That he's staying with in their hotel room or whatever for a week. After that, they show the fish guy again, but he's got a pickaxe this time. So I'm like, is he the groundskeeper? What does he do?
What does the pickaxe do?
I don't know. He just like has a pickaxe and he puts it down. Okay. The pickaxe opens and closes its mouth.
Okay.
After that, we fast forward a few months to the winter. And the guy's gone, and Elio gets a phone call from Oliver saying, hey, I'm just calling to let you know that I am getting married. So apparently this dude was also engaged.
Yeah, to a woman.
Yeah, and not only was he engaged to a woman, but he also, like, messed around with other girls while he was there. Like younger girls. Like the girls that are, like, kind of Elio's age, because they all go out to, like, a La Discotheque at some point.
And La Bibliothèque?
La Discotheque. They go out to, like, a discotheque, basically, and they're both, like, trying to hook up with girls in that scene or whatever.
Yeah.
So, like, this dude is obviously just, like, not a good guy.
Yeah.
There's a scene with the kid and his dad where the dad is like, basically, I knew the whole time, which raises a lot more questions. But, like, why'd you let him go off to whatever? And he's like, you guys had, like, a beautiful friendship and maybe more, if that's, I hope I'm not overstepping when I say this, but you guys had a friendship that most people never have. And it's, like, very, very much like, hey, what a great time you had. Better to have loved and lost than never have loved at all, basically.
History will say they were really good friends.
History will say they're the greatest roommates.
Yeah.
And at that point I was like, okay, so the movie really is posing all of this as just like, wow, what a beautiful love story.
Yep. Because
the
the
whole
dad
time it
knew
felt predatory.
that stuff was happening under his roof. The shame comes from not being accepted by a lot of people. So, like, the dad can solve a lot of problems. First off, it clearly doesn't seem like he has as much problem as we might have thought at first. Yeah. So you can just let your son know that
the parents are very supportive the whole movie, too. Like, you get the feeling that they have a healthy relationship with their son. Mm-hmm. They give him a lot of freedom to do whatever he wants, and they're very supportive, and they're never, like, mean or hateful or anything. They seem like really good people. Really
I just assume, like, because of the way he's hiding it, he just he's afraid in some way still of what his parents would think. Yeah. And of course you would be. You have an opportunity as a parent to let them know, even without coming out and saying it, that, like, there's nothing you can say about yourself that'll make me stop loving you. Before that, then also to know that this older man is living in your house and, I'll say it, taking advantage of your son, I think.
Yes, I agree.
And you're like, he's getting some, you know?
Yeah.
And then the end of the movie, like, because you could, like you said, have romanticized that whole thing, made the audience kind of, like, fall for it, and then pull the rug from under you and be like, hey, just so you know, that was all bad. Like,
Yeah.
or not, like, that was not above board, let's say.
Yeah.
You know?
At least show any negative side of it other than what will the neighbors think. Like, other than just the shame that you feel and how difficult it must have been to be in that position.
Yeah.
Like, the position that is difficult to be in because society won't accept you, not because you're being abused by an older man.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't say for sure what the movie wants, but I can say that I get the feeling like I'm supposed to be rooting for this relationship, and then I feel bad that it's over at the end. And I
didn't.
I don't like that. I feel that's what I'm supposed to be feeling, and that doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is also what makes me wonder, like, what were you trying to say with the fish and what were you trying to say with the apricots? Because what you're saying with the rest of the movie is that this kid had this beautiful relationship and it was healthy and good and normal.
And maybe, like you said, if it was written from a true experience, it could be how they see it. You know,
Yeah.
it could be unresolved trauma.
And it could be very much just a film of, let's put a real experience on TV so people relate to it, or on the big screen so people relate to it, because I guarantee you that there are millions of young gay men who went through that exact scenario with, like, an older man.
Yeah.
Maybe not that old, maybe much older.
Especially in a time period where you couldn't talk as much about it. It's easier to take advantage of that situation where all of this is going to be happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately the best message to learn from that, I think, is like, this is what happens when you stigmatize gay people or homosexuality in general. Is like, it's really unhealthy to not be able to talk about it with anyone other than other gay men who then are going to take advantage of you, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, not that they have to, but like...
Yeah, who do you talk about with that? And the stigma, again, is going to... A lot of that stigma might be, when this story comes out, it's just a hit on gay people. It's just, oh, gay people are predators. You know? And so, like, I don't know. It's nice that the movie could say to people that might have had that experience that, like, you're not alone. It would be a bit nicer at the end of the movie if it was, rather than, like, it's better to have loved than lost, like you said, but, like, we can move on from this. We can learn from this experience, even if it wasn't okay. We can live on, you know, things like that. But if we're missing a point, you know, I'm open to learning more about if I'm wrong.
Yeah. And I have a follow-up to this. There's another movie that I watched after watching this one, because it's something that Steph and I have been talking about watching for a while now. Something you and I have talked about it being a good movie that I've never seen. Brokeback Mountain.
I saw that on Letterboxd.
Yeah, and
great movie.
Wow, what a great movie, first
Yes.
of all. And second of all, it does everything better than Call Me By Your Name did.
Yeah.
It's not a coming-of-age story necessarily, but there certainly is a lot of, like, development of both of these guys learning about their sexuality and how to live with it in a very, very much more overtly homophobic world. Mm-hmm. It takes place from, like, through the 60s to the 70s, so it's even further in the past. It also takes place in rural Wyoming and Texas, so they are much worse off. But they are older; they're adults from the onset. Now, I loved this movie. I thought it was really, really good. Brokeback Mountain, that is.
Yeah.
And I thought that one of the best things that they did is very, very overtly, but without saying it, they show, like, both Jake Gyllenhaal's character and Heath Ledger's character respond to their own sexuality extremely differently. And it's a super toxic relationship.
Yep.
And that toxicity seeps into all of their other relationships. It's not viewed as a good thing, forcing them to
they beat
always...
each other up. I mean, it was
it's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it was really. It would be that toxic masculinity of, like, I'm gonna fight these urges with real manly violence instead.
Yeah.
And it would just be this awful outcome, and then, you know, it would spiral into romance in the midst of things like that. So you would end up having to relate the two things. You know what I mean? Their whole relationship was based on romance.
Their whole relationship was based.
They're fucking so based, dude.
But it was based on violence, and
Yeah.
it ends in violence because he dies, and that's it. You know,
It's all that, like, man, if we just are like, hey, would you just it's not that difficult to repress these emotions and just live a normal life with women and kids and stuff like that. It's like, that's gonna be toxic for the people around that too.
Yeah.
And everyone's just gonna be better off if we can just be open about that kind of thing. It's great movie.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And I really it was so refreshing to see that after watching Call Me by Your Name and thinking, man, I really wish that they would have shown this in a light that made me feel good about the intentions of the filmmaker.
Yeah, and so is that the movie that you thought I had you watch because it was bad?
Because you didn't like it and you wanted me to tell you how much I didn't like it too.
In a way, but I also...
It was like Nope.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as much as I've watched...
Not that Nope was a bad movie. It's just that we both hate it.
Yeah. I just felt like I was like, this movie... Sure, I left not liking it, and yet I still have a lot of thoughts about it, and not just negative thoughts, just thoughts, So I was like, that's an interesting movie to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, in the same way that I think that the relationship featured in Brokeback Mountain is interesting and like thought-provoking, but the filmmakers obviously had good heads on their shoulders being like, this is how this should not be. Yeah. I feel like Call Me by Your Name is thought-provoking in the same way, but I still don't think that the filmmakers know why that's the case. Like, I think that they're thinking it's provocative because it's the truth, and this is like what really happened. Yeah. Not, this is what really happens, we should do something about it. It's like, this is just something that happened, and it was really emotional for me, and I want to put it on screen.
And I was going to say, that is a lot
valid.
That's a lot to say about, do filmmakers and stuff like that have a job to do in terms of saying if it's good or bad, or can you just put a piece out there without a good or bad and just, this is what it is, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And it's interesting to talk about, and that's why I brought it to the list. I'm glad you watched it. I'm glad you had a lot to say about it. But yeah, let's move over to my first one.
Please, yes.
I started with Bernie. So I watched Bernie first.
I also rewatched Bernie. I'd seen it before, obviously, and I rewatched it for the second time ever over the weekend because I love that movie. And go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say about it.
So Bernie, I think when it was first on Netflix, I did try to watch it, and it was just not at the right time for me. And I might have watched 2 minutes of it or something. Sure. I really, at the end of it all, really liked it. It took me a really long time to get into it. Mm-hmm. Took me forever. It was a really slow burn at first.
The first time I watched that movie, I watched it in 2 parts, which is not something I normally do.
Yeah. So the movie is about, it's a Jack Black vehicle. I love that term. Jack Black plays this, what do you call it? Someone that works at a...
He's an assistant funeral director.
Yeah, and he prepares the bodies for funerals and stuff like that, and that's his main thing. And it's this small southern town, a little effeminate, but everyone likes him. He's just so dang pleasant. Like
Literally turn the dial all the way up to 11 in terms of likability, nice guy, pleasant. Everybody loves this guy. He is a saint.
Yeah. And it's funny the way the movie goes, because when the movie started and people were talking about how great he was, I was like, okay, so what's the twist? What is he really got going on? And that's not how the movie is. It's not what does he really got going on? He really is an amazing, decent, kind guy. Everyone in town likes him, and the movie is half doc, half not, because they'll do talking head interviews, and I think that made it hard for me because I'm not a talking head kind of guy, especially when it's actors doing it.
Yeah, scripted.
Because I can't tell for sure, but it felt like half the people in this movie are not actors at all.
I felt the same way. That's funny.
And the way they present it in the credits at the end, I get the feeling these half the people in this movie are not actors, even the way they do it, even the way they present in the credits. They're just from a small town, maybe even the small town where this happened, because spoiler alert, this is a true story.
It's a true story.
And I don't know if they advertised at the beginning, because
they do.
I didn't notice it.
I missed that the first time too.
I didn't notice it.
I think everyone does, because when you see a true story in the beginning in big stylized font, you're like, oh, okay, they're trying to bring me into the experience. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a real true story, but it is.
And it didn't really hit me until the end that it was actually a true story, because they'll show you like, and they do like based on news clippings instead of like based on a novel or whatever. Like it's all based on reading in the paper about this story about this guy. And so yeah, at first it's just a movie about a really nice guy and the townspeople talking about them but the rest of the movie is not like doc. So it's not like they know the camera's there. And so that put me off a little bit at first, the switching back and forth. Then there's this older woman who's like rich as hell, mean as hell, no one likes her, and her husband dies. And so she's like even more alone and bitter. But Jack Black's character Bernie opens up to her and just keeps showing her love. And so they kind of like are like true blue soulmates at first when it happens. You know, he's bringing her to all these events.
And she's a much older woman.
Yes.
He's probably 35-ish at the most. He might even be younger. And she's like 75, 80 maybe.
Yeah. And so when you start to see them like going to plays and stuff, and he's like opening her up to like good experiences and whatever, it's kind of sweet at first.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just gets like this really awful toxic relationship where it's a question in town whether it's sexual or not. No one really knows if it's a romantic relationship or whatever, but it feels that way in the way that they spend all their time together. He's using all of her money, like she pays for everything, like he's almost like she's a sugar mama in a way.
I will say one thing really quick. If you haven't seen this movie yet and you've been kind of thinking about it, watch the movie. I don't want to spoil it if you think you might want to watch it.
But I am going to spoil it now.
But we're going to spoil it now.
Yeah, I'm about to spoil it. Because then it gets to a head. She's so possessive, and it's just this terrible toxic relationship. He's too kind to get out of it, and he just happens to find himself in a situation where he has a gun in his hand, and she's got her back turned, and he shoots her 4-6 times, something like that.
4 times.
And
just in cold blood. She's just walking to the car, and
something comes over him, and he just does it. And then he puts the gun down and checks on her as if he didn't do it at first.
He's like dissociative experience.
Yeah, and then breaks down, but then eventually freezes the body and just keeps living life. And no one knows for the longest time. He's just got an excuse for everything about
9
why
months.
She's not there. Oh, she's in the hospital for this. Oh, she's doing that. She's visiting family or whatever. And he's got everyone fooled. And
he's spending her money.
Yeah, he's spending a lot of her money.
But not on himself.
No, he's buying things for other people.
He's actually like, I don't know if this is in the movie or in just the true story, because obviously after the movie I looked up a bunch of stuff about it because it's fascinating, but he spent a bunch of money on other people in the town. He was like behind on his car payments, and he lived in a tiny little house, and he was like, had like credit card debt, but he was spending her money in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Buying people cars.
Yeah.
Like
$10,000
donating 10 grand to the church or whatever to build like a new chapel, stuff like that. Like crazy spending on her behalf.
Yeah. And so
she gave him power of attorney before she died.
Right. Yeah,
he
before
already had power
all
of
of
attorney.
that. Yeah, he like gives him everything in the will and all that stuff.
Because her family had like, her grandchildren had tried to sue her for her money. She's really mean. She's like a mean old crone.
Oh yeah.
And her whole family is like, terrible relationship with her family, but she wants to cut them all out of her money.
Everyone in her family loves Bernie and just can't quite understand why he's with her. You know what I mean? And Bernie loves them. And then eventually the murder's discovered because of taxes. Because a tax agent is like, I need to see this woman and get her money. And like it's very funny that the only reason why they look into it is because of taxes and like trying to get the right information or whatever. And then he goes on trial. I'm kind of fast forwarding, but goes on trial, and basically it boils down to, we need to take this trial out of the town because everyone in this town loves Bernie so much they're kind of cool with what he did.
Yeah, and they hated her. She was mean.
Love him.
He was amazing, and he has to be tried in front of a jury of his peers.
Yeah,
and normally that's the town, but as they explain in the movie, you normally. You sometimes have a jury from another town do the case if like the people in the town have already made up their mind about the case because they
hate him already.
They hate the guy and they think that the guy is already a criminal. They're like, oh, obviously he did it. We're going to convict him. And so it wouldn't be a fair trial.
Right.
But this is like a very rare instance where
the state required it instead.
The state was like, we're not going to be able to convict him because everybody loves this guy so much.
And we've got his confession. We've got everything. He didn't try to hide it once it was found out. He's like, oh, I did it. Like, it's terrible, and I should pay for my sins. But everyone in the town's like, nah, I don't think so. I think he did the right thing.
Yeah, they're like, well, I don't think he did it. You can't convince me that he did. And if he did, I'm okay with it. Like,
yeah.
You just can't get around it.
And you as an audience member kind of are too, because you're just like...
Oh, yeah, because they spend an hour plus
talking
just
about
showing how great he is and how bad she is.
And yeah, but at that point I was glued to the movie. Like by the time I could sense something was like, I could tell that it was getting to that point where I was like, I think he might kill her. Because at first I thought she was going to find dead bodies of his and be like, oh, he's a murderer this whole time. And then when I hit the point where I realized, no, he's just a great guy, that's when I got like roped into the movie more. But the first act or so took so long for me to get into, and then by the end of the movie I was in love with it. It's crazy.
You liked it though?
I loved it, especially that it was a true story, and you see the stuff at the end.
If it wasn't a true story,
be a little
would not
weirder.
be as interesting. But the fact that it's a true story, it's like it hits you.
Yeah,
because that's a real story.
Jack Black's great, but there's a standout in this movie. It's Matthew McConaughey. He fucking kills it in this movie. For some reason, I don't even think he's doing anything special, but he's like the cop that wants to, like once he figures out what's going on, he's like, I'm gonna try Bernie, and he's like he feels like he's going crazy because he's the only one in town who's like, Bernie killed a person, he should go to prison for it. And there's a scene where he's at a diner, and he's with 3 people who are being interviewed through a whole movie. They're not being interviewed at this point. It's just an actual scene. But it's 3 people who I think aren't like your average actor. I think they're just small town people who are brought in.
Feels that way. It's great casting if they're really
like that.
They're amazing actors if they are actors.
It's just Matthew McConaughey getting served by one woman, 2 other people on their side.
He's just eating breakfast in a
just
diner.
Eating breakfast. Clearly being a professional actor with all these people who feel like real people around him. And it just... You'd think it wouldn't work, and it just so works. I was enthralled by it.
Yeah.
That it was like, God, I get the feeling like they just went to a small town, asked 3 people off the street who wants to be in this scene, and then put Matthew McConaughey in the middle of it, and it works flawlessly. The banter's incredible.
Yeah, and what he's talking about is he's like, it's so weird because like you are on Bernie's side as the audience.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, he killed her, and that's messed up, but she deserved it, and he's really nice, and like justice in my head like feels like justice would be him getting to go free, because honestly he like kind of did the world a favor by killing her or whatever. But then like this guy's the only person who's like, he confessed.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put him away.
He's found her body in the fridge in his house. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, he's like he's like, has the whole world gone crazy? Like that's his mentality. The whole movie is just like, I don't understand how anybody could not be on my side about this.
Yes. The scene's great. And at first, when he starts doing Talking Heads for a second, I'm like, I wonder if they just got him for a day to do Talking Heads. Because it didn't feel like a movie that Matthew McConaughey would be in.
Yeah.
And then he just started, all of a sudden, later on in the movie, appearing into real scenes. And I was like, no, he's in this from the start to the beginning for the whole ride. He's here.
He's basically awesome. The major antagonist, because he is the one in the courtroom trying to put Bernie away.
It's a wild movie.
It's a trip.
Yeah, it's a good time, though.
I'm glad you watched it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
It's a fun, very unique movie.
Yes, it is.
I want more movies that just are weird like that. All right, next movie?
Let's go to the next movie.
No, because I want to talk about Call Me By Your Name again.
Okay.
I forgot to mention something, because it didn't flow naturally with the conversation. Armie Hammer
is a cannibal.
He's a cannibal.
Yeah. So the whole movie is he wasn't outed as a cannibal yet when I had seen it.
Right.
With you, yeah.
Wild.
He's a cannibal.
I could not believe that.
Oh, did you not know when you were watching it?
No, I didn't.
You found out about it after you were looking into it? Yeah.
Well, Steph told me.
Oh.
She was like, oh yeah, he's a cannibal. I was like, what are you talking about?
I definitely heard you wrong, right?
Next movie.
Yeah, what'd you watch second?
Inside.
You watched Inside.
By Bo Burnham.
Let me preface this. when we started this list, this is the only thing out of those three that you suggested I suggest to you. You're like, you know what? I haven't seen Inside yet. You've wanted me to see it.
Because I knew that you wanted me to watch it already.
And at first I would never have suggested it to you because I didn't really think of it as a movie as much as I thought of it just as like a YouTube video, you know? But it's on Letterboxd, so I was like, fine, let's do it as a movie.
So it counts.
Hell yeah. All right.
So to preface the conversation about Inside, I am not the biggest Bo Burnham fan.
Right.
I am sure that if I knew Bo Burnham in real life, that we would get along really well. Like, I think that I don't have any problem with him as like a person. I also don't think that he's like doing a bad job. It just, all his stuff doesn't resonate with me the way it seems to resonate with everybody else.
Right.
And I can see it and be like, oh yeah, that was fun. Like, I think he's hilarious. And I think he's very clever. He's extremely clever. But I personally, I feel like anytime I watch something by him, I already agree with what he's saying. And I feel like a lot of times his stuff is framed as like, I'm gonna pull you in with this like silly song, and then I'm gonna twist it at the last second and make you really think. And I'm like, I was already thinking. Like, I already know that. Like, I don't get that, like, oh my God, he got me. He tricked me into really thinking about the world. I'm thinking about the world 100% of the time. 24 hours a day, I'm thinking stuff like that.
Sure.
It's weighing on my mind all the time. So for me to, like, want to escape into comedy and, like, have that, like having comedy that has, like, a backbone of, like, real issues and, like the way that George Carlin does it, where he's like, let's really talk about these things.
Yeah.
That's fine. I like that a lot. I really appreciate that. But specifically the way that Bo Burnham does it makes me feel like it's not for me. It's for somebody who doesn't think about this stuff all the time. And I have a feeling that Bo Burnham thinks about this stuff all the time, too.
And you don't get that impression with George Carlin, though.
It's the delivery, I think. It's the way that, like, George Carlin does it in a way where it's just a joke that has that, like, truth to it. Whereas Bo Burnham will be like, I'm making a different joke, and then at the last second, I'm going to change it to flip it on you. There's, like, a surprise. Yeah. Which means that for me, I'm always, whenever I watch Bo Burnham, knowing this, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
There's times where he'll, like, start doing a song or a joke or something, and then stop and cut it off abruptly. And the times he doesn't do that, I'm still waiting for it, and then it's like a little uncomfortable for me because I'm like, oh, okay, now I thought I was waiting for like the bit where you change it, but you didn't. That was the whole thing.
Right.
And so I'm like, I feel like I'm just constantly let down a little bit all the time, which is unfortunate because I would love to be able to enjoy it more.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, it's like the thing that happens when we get that twist, that like classic Bo Burnham twist.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me think any more than I'm already thinking. You know, and sometimes it does. Not to say that it has no effect on me. I'm not immune to it, but I just think that shtick is really good for some people, because they're not expecting it. If that makes sense.
I can understand that.
I really think he's very funny, and I think he's very clever, like I said. And I also think that Inside specifically, very visually funny. There's a lot of visual comedy to it, and it's dark. It's a dark comedy in a way. It's a dark stand-up special, kind of.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not a comedy. It's a comedy show, but dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I appreciate. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I think the closest that's why I can conflate it to a YouTube video, because that's like the closest you get to things like that are commentary videos, vlogs and stuff like that. That's really a genre you just don't see on the big screen. Yeah. But like, it's how it felt. Yeah. It just felt like something from YouTube on the big screen, and that was awesome. My
favorite bit that he does, I have a clear favorite and a clear least favorite. Because Inside is made up of like a bunch of different bits, kind of, like any stand-up special or whatever.
Yeah.
Even though, if you haven't seen it, it's not a stand-up special. It was made during the pandemic. He's inside. He spends the whole special inside this one room, and he has a lot of like lights and just some projection mapping, and it's very visually. It's really cool, and you also get the sense that he is really trapped inside this room, and at the same time, it's like kind of a what's the word for it? It's like symbolic of being like trapped inside your own head, because he talks a lot about mental illness, and like he gets really depressed throughout it and stuff, and like everybody was going through a lot of these things throughout the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's very much of its time. Very much of its time.
Yeah, it's mental health pandemic musical.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing, though, was him reacting to a video. Because I feel like all of Bo Burnham's content, at least most of it, is like he is saying something at first. That's the first part of the joke or the song or whatever. And then when you hit that classic Bo Burnham twist again, it is then an analysis of the first half of the piece. Every like a ton of songs and jokes that he does, it starts one way, and then he flips it and turns the lens back on the first half.
Yeah.
And him reacting to reacting is him literally doing that.
Yeah. And
then he does it again, and he does it again, and it's recursive, and it's like, okay.
That's so interesting, because that's got to be right where we differ. Is we just watched Bo Burnham differently. Because I would have assumed you would have hated that part because of the way you watch Bo Burnham, where like I don't expect a twist. I'm never like waiting for a twist, because I don't see it as a twist. I see it as him getting in his own head over and over. He like is like, I want to write a song, and then let me analyze my own work, and then let me really analyze, and oh fuck, I just hate myself and my work, and I think the things I'm saying are pretentious, and so it's like it's like content about creating content and then hating yourself for it.
Yep.
And so rather than feeling like a twist and like a mirror to you, it feels like God, we all keep putting the mirrors to ourselves and like overanalyzing ourselves, and we don't even know who our real self is anymore. And so it just feels like an overanalysis, like going crazy rather than like a twist gotcha.
It's like an infinite spiral.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I like it. Because
I just mean in all of his content is what I mean. Like the
well, that's why I like that particular one, because it is representative of all the other ones.
Yeah.
This was like a real artist representation of Bo Burnham's content about recursivity in thinking about your own content, and it is made by Bo Burnham. It's like, that is beautiful to me. I think that is like art, like capital A art, is when you really drill down into something like that, and it's a thing about drilling down infinitely.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a really beautiful pice of art. I don't think that's that funny. I think that it's kind of beautiful. That's why I like that part. Moving on. He has a bit in there where he says, "I wish that I could kill myself for a year."
I don't remember him saying that.
Yeah. So he talks about suicide a number of times.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really, really appreciate that, because that thought of, I want to kill myself, but I don't want to have to deal with the permanent consequences of it.
Yeah.
I want the satisfaction of being able to say, okay, I give up on life. Here's my out. But then not hurting all the people in my life by not being around anymore.
Yeah. We want that middle ground between sleep and death.
Well, that's exactly it, right? And that's what resonated with me so much about it, is that when I get into a really bad depressive episode, the thing that I do is I sleep all day.
Yeah.
I wake up and I just try to get back to sleep again. And if my mental health is in such a bad state that I'm really, really not doing well, I can sleep for like 20 hours. And then I'll like be up for 30 or whatever. But like there are times where I just am like, just go back to sleep. Just hit the fast forward button on today, because it really does feel like that. Like I just want to be dead for a few more hours. It will get me closer to the finish line of just not being around anymore. And like I know it's very dark to talk about this, but like it's very much something that I feel. And like when I'm really, really not doing well, I do basically kill myself for 8 hours at a time when I go to sleep. It's not just to rejuvenate so I can get up and be gung-ho the next day. It's literally because I just want to fast forward through my life.
Yeah.
To have less of it. And so that really resonated with me.
It's good to bring up. We've talked about this a little bit, that we like to be open about it, and it's very topical right now, I'm sure, for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
It's a miracle that I finished these movies this week. God, that was the hardest thing in the world. Shouldn't be. Just watching movies, just entertaining yourself, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Anyways, more of inside. My least favorite part, and this bugs me so much, there's a part of Inside that I hated. There's a moment where he's sitting like in front of a bunch of lights and things, and he's like, well, I've been working on this for a year now, working on Inside.
Yeah.
Working on it for a year now, and then he like fumbles with his words or whatever, and he's like, okay, does like another take. He's like, well, I've been working on this for a year now. And he does it like a third time, and he's like obviously getting very frustrated with himself.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be this very intimate moment, right? And there's this thing that you do in filmmaking when you want to have an intimate moment where you bring the camera very far away. Mm-hmm. And you put stuff in the foreground.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you want an intimate moment between Jim and Pam kissing on The Office, you shoot it through the blinds.
Sure.
Because it feels like, ooh, we're not supposed to be seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
We're a fly on the wall in this intimate moment. Bo Burnham shoots this scene of him being very personal with the camera and with the audience from in front of a bunch of lights. Like the lights that are lighting him are in front of the camera. And I was like, okay, so you're just doing the intimate shot thing. Okay. And I was like, that feels fake and manufactured now. I guarantee you, while he was making Inside, he had those real thoughts. Every day he probably was like, I wish I was done with this. This is taking forever. It's not perfect. I hate myself. All this stuff. I'm sure there were a million times where he had those very depressing, stressful thoughts about making this thing.
Yeah.
But then, when he actually decided to film this scene, at the end of it, he gets really mad and he throws a fit and he starts knocking down the lights. And it's supposed to feel like, oh man, wow, he really is going through a lot. And I'm like, you set up the camera so I could see you knock over the lights.
You don't get the impression, though, that the entire project from start to finish, he was recording with two cameras that whole time? Because all the transitions are him setting up his camera and his lights from the angle of it, from behind the scenes camera. You know what I mean? He constantly had he constantly had a camera recording himself making the show.
Yeah, I feel like most of the time, though, that was just for the setup. Like he would show himself setting stuff up, and then the actual like camera that was filming was other stuff.
I have a feeling you're wrong about that. Then
I would love to be wrong
because I think that he just was picking and choosing from all the footage in the world he had.
I hope that that's the case, because I was a little bit pissed that he was taking something that was supposed to be an intimate moment and acting it. Instead of genuinely just having the intimate moment caught on camera, which is like, I felt like you want me to think you got it caught on camera, but it feels very manufactured to me. And I know that he genuinely probably had those emotions.
Can I ask you a question then about that? If you just so happened to catch that moment on camera with your behind the scenes camera, and you also have the footage of the real camera, would you have used the real camera in fear that people would have thought you acted it out because you just so happened to get it on behind the camera? Like just say that is a legitimate scene. Do you think he would have been better off using the other camera because it would have looked less fake, even though?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the intimate moment thing, it really sells that it's an intimate moment shooting from that backup camera or whatever. Yeah. But I don't recall there actually being another camera. I thought that the one that I was looking at was the only one, so I could be wrong, and I hope that I am. Because it sounds very logical what you're saying. I think you're right. Like, I think that if that truly is what happened and that's the shot that he got, then that's definitely the better way to do it. But maybe that was just because I missed that there was another option.
That's, I guess, just the impression I got because of all the, he would switch angles throughout the thing, and he would have footage of himself, transitional footage, and I thought you could tell that he would have like a wide shot of just him making content, and then his like professional camera that he was using.
Sure. I'd have to take another look at that scene.
Yeah.
I really wish that I had watched it as soon as it came out.
That's a weird thing to decide after kind of more like catching fully up and being like, it's official. I guess I just don't like Bo Burnham. So for now on, I'm going to watch it as soon as he makes it.
It's not that I just don't like him. Like, it's not that simple. There's a lot I like about it. I also, another thing about Bo Burnham is that, like, I'm very jealous of his success. You know, like, he's my age. And
But you wouldn't be comfortable with yourself making that content if you don't like it, right? You would be uncomfortable having made that stuff.
I don't think he's 100% comfortable with the content he does make either, which is why it feels so, like, kind of personal to me. Because he also is constantly thinking about his content, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one of the things where I'm like, I see myself a lot. I see, like, a more successful version of myself. So I'm sitting here being like, man, I really wish that I could be in his shoes in a way. Like, I'm very jealous of it, because I want to be a content creator or
and
whatever.
I think that's why, like, content creators of all shapes and sizes tend to usually gravitate towards Bo Burnham, because it's content about making content.
Sure.
And then now we're living in a world where we just make content all the time. Even if you're not a content creator, you just are on social media. You have a brand, a presence, even if you don't know you do.
Right.
And so you feel like you can relate more to those feelings, even if you're not a content creator, than you ever have before.
I've always had kind of conflicted feelings about watching Bo Burnham's content, though. And I think that it's because I feel it resonates with me so much to the point where it takes me out of it.
Yeah,
it's
maybe,
like too much.
Anytime you even a little bit want to cringe, you feel like you're cringing at yourself.
Yeah. And at that point, I'm
You're
like,
I wouldn't do shit like that.
I would do something like that, and yet he's still doing it better than I ever could. So I feel like I'm failing to even fail the way that he's failing. When I see him do something where I'm like, I don't even like that, and yet it's still better than what I could do, and I feel like, you know what I mean? Like,
there is definitely,
weirdly,
like, I'll talk about Bo for hours and hours with Max, and both big fans, and we both talk about how, like, man, that was awesome. Don't you feel like shit now? You know, like, it does always rub it in your face a little bit. Not like it's doing it on purpose, but like, I guess there's something probably from he started on YouTube. He is kind of the perfect representation of what you wanted from that world, where you leave YouTube and then you get bigger than it. Like he's not on YouTube. He's not on YouTube now because he's bigger and better than it. It's just content that's not for YouTube now. It's like he's grown appropriately rather than when you see YouTubers on the big screen, you're like, this feels weird. It's like, this is where Bo Burnham is meant to be.
Yeah, that was the natural path. And it feels like
and it's what you want.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of people took the YouTube path because they wanted to kind of reject the traditional, like, Hollywood or whatever path for content creation. And then Hollywood was like, man, you're so successful, come work for us. And they were like, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, now that feels like you switch teams.
And it's like sometimes a lot of times when you do switch teams, it's like you fit better here. You know what I mean? Just, it might seem flashier and stuff, but your talents come across better on here, on YouTube and all that stuff. And his just worked and happened so, to the viewer at least, organically. And is what you want for other creators and for yourself. If you're a content creator, you want to start there, and then your talent gets so big and you're the next big thing and stuff. So it's definitely like the perfect example in a bubble of what you want from content creation.
Yeah, that makes sense to
but
me.
Anybody.
Yeah,
you know,
the given YouTube fan or whatever.
Yeah, so I think there's I think every creator in the world always feels a little jealous every time Bo Burnham puts something out, which is very interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
My turn or you have more notes?
No. That's
my turn for
I was
second
turning
movie.
turning the page on yet another movie discussion.
Well, last night I watched the last two movies.
Okay.
I'm really, really down to the wire because we had a full week basically. So I watched second Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes, you had never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Never seen it.
Wild, especially for like a Halloween guy like yourself.
I know.
You love a Halloween.
And it's always been on my list, and I've always like wanted to. And truly, every Halloween time, I have like a list of like, oh, better start watching those movies again. And it's always on my list, and then I go, there's just no place to watch it. I guess I'll wait for next year or whatever. And this time around, I just found the full thing on YouTube with Spanish subtitles.
Yes.
So I just had to ignore that a little bit. I have a harder time, depending on the way that I guess the music's mixed sometimes, totally understanding the lyrics the first time I hear a song.
Oh, me too.
And boy, was it hard when my natural instinct was to look at the subtitles to get clues and being like, okay. But that movie had the opposite for me in terms of Bernie, where right when it got me so in, and then I lost so much steam as it went on.
Oh, yeah. I would agree with that.
Like halfway through the movie, I was just like, I'm not interested. I'm bored.
Yes.
I'm bored.
It slows down.
It slows down, especially because it starts to do things where you're just like, I don't know what's important anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to invest myself in. Because then, like, Meatloaf shows up out of the blue and then is gone out of the blue, and you're like, what was that? And then it's, like, an important thing later, and you're like, is that guy?
Yeah.
Is Eddie Meatloaf? Because he just drove through a wall and died. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And then, then it really slows down. Then you're just like, I don't know. Ultimately, wasn't a fan because of that.
Yeah.
But when it started, I was so into the visuals, I was so into the hokey acting, I was so into the everything artsy about it and fun, and I was just like, oh, the sets seem so fun, and everyone's dressed so fun, and this seems like such a fun environment, and they're killing it in terms of performance and stuff like that, and everyone feels like they wanted to be there and is doing something really important and cool.
True, yeah.
But yeah, after a certain time, probably after the creature is... No, probably after they kill off Meatloaf. There's a point in time where they made this creature, like this Frankenstein's monster creature, but he's a beautiful white man. Yeah, and then suddenly a motorcycle drives through the wall, and it's Meatloaf, and
he sings a song.
He sings a song, and they don't tell you really, but I got the impression, and I'm assuming I'm right, that he's the ex-boyfriend of one of the girls that's there.
Oh, yeah, it's in the song, for sure.
Yeah, but also she's an alien, right? She's still an alien. Yeah,
the aliens are Frankenfurter and everyone who lives in the house.
And that's her. She's one
Eddie,
of them.
not an alien.
Not him, no.
Anyone else that we see in there, Rocky, not an alien, but any of the other ones that we see.
The two women and the hunched guy are the other two aliens. Probably three aliens.
Fun fact, the hunched guy is the playwright who wrote it.
Cool.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
He does such a good job.
Yeah, he does.
I love it so
much. One of my
much.
favorite performances.
Especially when in Time Warp he has that line where his voice totally changes. He's like, I remember! And he's like, whoa!
And he does it a couple times throughout that.
Yeah.
And those are my two favorite songs in the whole thing. There's three probably, but it's the classics. So it didn't no song surprised me.
Nothing that you hadn't already heard.
Yes, because Time Warp...
You can't hold that against the movie.
That's what's going to happen if you watch Grease for the first time. You know, you're like, oh, I've heard these, the good ones. But Time Warp, Damn It, Janet, and Sweet's Transvestite. Those three are the three that had me gripped the whole time. I was like, even if I don't care, I don't know what they're saying, I love these songs.
Yeah, even if you were just basically watching the music video for those songs, they would play.
They were great, and they were better with context.
Yes.
Yeah, so he drives through with a motorcycle, sings this song, and then Frankenfurter kills him bloodily, very nasty, but off screen.
Yeah.
And then they're just kind of like, let's move on to the next song. And that, once they moved on to the next song, I was like, this is giving Cats a little bit.
Does Eddie show up before or after the first night? Is that
is the
while
first
they're
night.
being introduced or whatever? But that's not when Frankenfurter goes into their rooms.
No, because that scene's fucking hilarious.
That, I think, is if the movie ended there, would be great. I think that's the end of the interesting parts for me. And then just fast forward me to the very end. And I like the part where they do the table reveal too.
What's the table reveal?
Eddie's body is inside the table.
Yeah.
The actors didn't know that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Because I thought that they were eating Eddie.
Oh, gotcha.
Because they were cooking the stuff, and then when...
I think that may be intentional. I'm not sure, though.
Maybe, because then when they feed the detective or whatever, the professor in the wheelchair, and he says something, and he asks about Eddie again, and he says, Eddie is a tender subject. Something about eating the food, it's hard. It's better going down or whatever. And it's like, oh, the food's tender too, and it made it feel like Eddie's a tender subject, and so is the food, and food is Eddie. And
That may also be true because like Eddie's body's I think like opened
pieces,
up or whatever.
yeah, so maybe
that is the remains of him is there, but like they were eating him too. So it might be both. Yeah.
And the scenes of the two split scenes of him sneaking into each of the couple's bedroom as the other one.
And I like the musical number. The Susan Sarandon singing "Touch It, Touch It, Touch It, Touch Me."
Yeah, you're right. I think
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. She's incredible in the movie, and no one's a weak link in the movie.
That's true. The only weak link I think would be some of the supporting cast. You just don't know like what those other girls are doing, like, what's their deal or whatever.
The girl with the bigger hair was a weaker one. The girl with the shorter hair, whose boyfriend
like
is
her
Eddie.
I
like her.
I like her a lot. Yeah, I wish that we see more of her. Honestly.
The girl with the bigger hair is doing a bad,
like a Dracula impersonation.
Not even that. Bellatrix Lestrange. I know she wasn't around yet, but like it feels like someone's trying to do a high school Bellatrix Lestrange thing. But it's also like I don't know what the original is, like what she's trying to redo or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, she's the only one that I wasn't super into. The scene where they're all like Janet, and like Frank. And Eddie, or not Eddie, Rocky, and then Rocky just looking at him every time. That whole thing is good. The comedy that I wish they would. I almost wish there wasn't as much music because they wouldn't do enough dialogue between. And I was like, I want to hear him like fully go into Frank without singing because he's doing some really fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
The comedy that's not in the music is really good. I love the fourth wall breaking when he looks at the camera, talks to the camera. I love when he throws the water on the camera.
Yeah.
I think that looks so good. And I also really like the guy that cuts in and narrates.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't think I would, and I liked it.
Yeah. It's very little of it. It's just the right amount.
I think they could have done a little bit more because they do it a couple of times at the beginning. And I remember when once Meatloaf shows up, I'm like, haven't seen that guy that does exposition in a while. Could have used him here because it's been a long time of like going from song to song, and I'm like, I don't know what the important parts are, and I don't know what to latch onto here. And then he comes back all of a sudden during the dinner scene where I'm just like, there he is.
So there's a bit, and I'm no expert on the movie, but it is definitely a movie that you should look into, like the behind the scenes and Easter eggs and stuff, because it is jam packed with Easter eggs.
I bet.
Like the creator being the one dude or whatever. But one of the really cool ones is, and I don't remember the full detail on it or whatever, but he holds up a famous painting at one point. And it's like a painting of like a woman.
Who does? Frank does, or
the exposition guy? He like holds up this painting. It's like a famous painting, but. And like references that painting, but that's not actually that painting. It's like I forget who it is, but it's either him or Tim Curry or the playwright dressed as a woman, and they just show it for a second, and like you don't notice, but that's actually like a dude. It's like they recreated it.
That's awesome.
There's all kinds of stuff throughout that movie. This little bits.
That's crazy.
Of
little bits. The only thing that I noticed that I thought I wasn't supposed to notice, and I'm sure that's not true, but was seeing Tim Curry so early
in the beginning
at the wedding.
Yeah, as the American Gothic.
Yeah.
Whatever, yeah.
They did that a lot, the American Gothic. I wonder what that is saying.
I don't know. Unless
it's really just like the old fogies versus the coming out of your shell, and maybe the couple is that American Gothic at first, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Old fogies in the surface, maybe they have you, because you always do feel like that couple has something going on in the house that you don't know about.
Yeah,
you know, so that's maybe what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I will say that is not a movie that I liked the first time I saw it either. Not that I hated it or whatever, but I was like, I watched it with a bunch of friends who were really, really, really into it, you know, and they would go see the midnight showings and whatever, and like the shadow performances, whatever you call it. I've never seen it live still, but I've seen the movie a bunch now, and I feel like it's one of those movies that I'll watch it, and then I'll really appreciate like the time warp and like a lot of the jokes and stuff, but then it'll stick with me, and like Halloween will come around again, and I'll be like, maybe I'll give it another shot because like there are things I like about it.
Yeah.
So let me go in, rewatch it for the things that I like, and then I still think that the end is a slog.
Yeah.
But I like the last song, and the more I watch it, the more I like it. And I found myself the most recent time that I watched it, which was Halloween, not last year, but the year before, I believe. Maybe it was this most recent year, though. I just was like at work listening to
The soundtrack?
the soundtrack like on a loop for like all of October because I was just like, man, I'm just into it now. I really
I could see
appreciate
doing
it
that
more.
because that's something I feel I do. I'll spend a good portion of time, like every 8 months, where I'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna be listening to the Grease soundtrack for a while.
Yeah, it's a good
I
soundtrack.
never need to watch that movie again. Like I've watched it a couple times. Only ever cared to watch it the one time. Not a huge fan of the movie. Love the music and listen to it all the time. So I don't know if I'll ever feel the itch to watch Rocky Horror again, but I definitely will be listening to the music again.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, the deeper appreciation for it and stuff.
And I think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah.
I will say that definitely look into like watch a video on like all the Easter eggs and stuff because there's so many. There's just so many.
That's fun.
And like one of the things that's kind of cool is that the only reason Tim Curry did that role in the movie is because he did it in the stage play, and they couldn't find anyone else to do it like he did. And the only reason that he did it in the stage play is because he showed up and did his voice, that voice he does. They wanted like a Frankenstein guy. They were like, do a German accent. And he was like, came out of the gate swinging with this crazy, and that's just one of those things you see that and you're like, this is the guy.
Yeah.
He's taken that role and running with it. Like
Yeah.
it's nowhere near probably how they originally envisioned it, but it works so well because it's so weird.
Yeah, his performance is so incredible that even when I was like waiting for the movie to be over during that big final song when the alien guys come in and like, we're gonna kill ya, ya motherfucker, I was like, this felt like a Marvel fight at the end where I'm like, I know the ending here, can we just move on? And yet I still was like, every time they would cut to Tim Curry, I'd catch a glimpse in his eye, or I'm just like, I feel so bad for him right now.
Yeah.
I feel so sad for this character. And I don't know the moral, like, because, like, ultimately he's not a good guy.
No. He's evil.
I liked him
But
the
he's
whole
fun.
time. You know what I mean? Like,
It is cranking up the queer-coded villains to, like, 111. Like, it's just, he's literally just this wacky dude who's just doing whatever he wants, and in a way that is, like, helping other characters, like, reveal things about themselves. Like, because, like, he definitely, like, fast-tracks this little innocent 50s couple or whatever. Like, Brad and Janet are supposed to be at the start of the movie. He definitely takes them on a journey. They're different people by the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
but
doesn't
they go
do
to
it
space
selflessly.
with them, don't they? Or, it's kind of ambiguous, I guess.
They take...
Because
they
they're all in the
basically
water.
are like... Yeah, but they basically take... they take Frankenfurter back to his home planet.
They do.
When the guy shows up with that, like...
No, they kill
trident gun. Oh, they kill him.
They kill him.
I think that they say they're like arresting him to take him back home or whatever.
Well,
or
when they
something like that.
when they get in, they say he's like, I don't want to leave, and he's like, and he does that whole song about, I guess I'm going home, and he's like, I'm sorry if you misunderstood what I was saying. We're going home. You're staying here forever. In a sense, I'm gonna kill you.
Because he's dead. Yeah.
And then he kills the other girl that Eddie was dating.
Yes.
And then he's up there and he shoots both Rocky and Frank and kills them both, and they kind of fall down. And then they're like, "Yeah, we're the best." And it's just the two of them singing, kind of re-singing the Time Warp, and it's like cutting between the original Time Warp and the two of them now. Mm-hmm. And they're like giddy about it.
And they become the American Gothic people at the end because he's got the gun that's in the shape of a trident, and it's him and the girl.
Yeah, you're right.
Which I don't know what that means, but it's interesting. It's visually interesting, and it's fun, and it's very, very campy, and I totally get why it's a cult hit.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much.
And maybe I will need to watch it again in a better mood too, and I'll like,
yeah, maybe
they'll be breathing life into it again. You know,
it's also like not necessarily the kind of movie you like watch alone as
It's a group
cinemaphile.
movie.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's a really wacky, goofy movie that has a really devoted fan base. It's called Hit.
Yeah. I'm glad I watched it.
Good,
Good
yeah.
time.
I'm glad.
Good time. I'll probably letterbox it 3. You know, where it's like, I really liked
3 stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liked what I liked, and then
Give it a heart?
was just bored.
No heart. Oh, just
I
a
don't
3.
know.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just a 3.
I thought you were leading into I'll give it a 3, but give it a heart. But no.
If
no
it was
heart.
the soundtrack only.
That's fair.
You know?
That's honestly very fair.
And then Bernie, I'll do 4 heart.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it could have been executed better, but
And there are just
very-
things that maybe just was off for me the first time, and I don't even know if it could be executed better. It just wasn't my cup of tea in certain aspects. But that's
Yeah,
it.
and like I said, when I rewatched Bernie, I think I liked it. I liked the beginning a lot more because I know what's coming.
Right. Yeah. Moving on to the last one.
This is my last one.
Last one for you. Then I still got one. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And this one's the one I put on for you.
Yes, this is a me movie, and I realized that as I was watching it.
So I did a inside you suggested, but I was like, it's kind of a for me.
I suggested
even though
because you've
suggested
told me
it.
to watch it so many times already.
The other one was a discussion movie. I had a lot to. I wanted this one was for you.
I love it. I love that very much. So this movie is called Primer. And it's weird. It's so weird.
Dan showed me this movie
This movie,
a long time ago.
I don't really know. I only have 3 notes about Primer.
Interesting.
Because it's so, man, I don't even know. If I had found out that everyone who watched this movie other than me hated it, I'd be like, yeah, of course you did.
Right.
This movie's not for you. This is for me.
It was made for John Mastretta.
It really
and,
was.
And the people that had made it have for years been like, when is John going to watch this movie?
They gotta go back in time. They already knew.
Yeah.
They went back in time to make this movie for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know what happened in this movie,
I know.
but I liked it a lot.
I know.
Okay.
I'm so glad
I don't
that's
remember
the
what's-
feeling. That's so funny.
I don't remember what star rating I gave it on Letterboxd, but this movie Primer, here are my 3 notes, okay? I have no idea what's going on, but I'm very interested. They're keeping me interested. And that was like halfway through the movie.
Wow.
Literally like, well, at least like a third of the way through, the thing hasn't happened yet. Like the
Oh, so they're still struggling? Or no? Have they succeeded?
Okay, so there's they were like in the garage making it work or whatever.
and
They
you can
didn't
talk
really
about
know.
it. Like,
Oh,
start,
yeah.
Start,
So
start by going through it.
I can't talk about because I don't know what happened in that movie.
From your understanding.
Okay, so basically you have these guys. It's 4 guys at the start, and 2 of them are like. It has very much like Silicon Valley, like we're starting Apple kind of vibes, or like
Yeah.
the Social Network kind of deal, but like in the 80s maybe.
I don't know. It's very, very indie. Like they made
Yes.
it themselves.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's these guys who are like, yeah, they're talking about this like science experiment they're running in their garage, and they're selling some kind of product. They're like soldering things and like making some kind of technology thing. They're like making homemade graphics cards and selling them on the internet, or not even on the internet, through the mail. And like, so you get the sense that these guys are like very smart, tech savvy guys, and they're trying to like be the entrepreneurs or whatever. And you're like, man, we're really getting on the ground floor of Apple or whatever. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
But then 2 of the guys are like, whoa, we figured out this thing. It really works. And they're talking about the science behind it, but I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I realized...
it's so in-depth and so indie that you almost are like, did this happen? Did
Yeah.
they film this for real?
Oh, yeah. and that's my 3rd point on here, which is coloring looks awesome. The whole movie is like sepia tint.
Yeah,
and it looks more like found footage and very underground and whatever.
It's like it was filmed on a Polaroid.
It was filmed on a Polaroid, and it makes you feel like you aren't supposed to be watching it.
Yeah.
It's very much like I've found a secret tape, and it's narrated a little bit like that too. The guy's like, and then this happened. He's like telling the story of what you're watching, and he's like, this is the only recorded. This voice recording is the only proof of what has happened here. But basically, they invent some kind of weird thing, and they don't know what it does, and they're like, I've never seen anything like this, but it's stable, and it's stable, it's working, or whatever. And you're like, I don't know what they're doing. And then they take like a Russian nesting doll and they put it in their little science box. And then
The best description for it. It's
yes,
just
it
a
really
science
is a science box because it's gibberish.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like gibberish when they talk about it. It sounds like, oh, they're just way smarter than me. Mm-hmm. And it's like they put this thing in there and then they like take it to the lab later and they're like, what's all this stuff on here? And they're like, oh, it's mold. But how long would it take for this mold to have molded? And they're like, it's like nobody's touched this thing in 5 years. And so basically they've invented some kind of time manipulation device where this little thing has like experienced 5 years of time in like 5 minutes or whatever. And so then they're like, if we can get ourselves inside of a machine like this, we could use it to... They don't explicitly say it, but what they are saying is we can use it to go back in time.
Yeah. And I still don't understand fully.
I don't either.
There was a time where I did a lot of research with like videos explaining and like doing reading on like people have written essays about it and stuff, and I was like, it was touted. The reason why I watched it was touted as like the closest to real time travel that a movie's ever gotten, or something like that. And I was like,
it feels like it.
It feels like
they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You're just watching these guys talk in this very scientific, gibberish kind of way where they sound way smarter than you, and they're telling you that like this is how you're like watching them discover time travel, basically, that they accidentally invented time travel.
Yeah.
But the way that their time travel works, it's very much like a hard sci-fi. Like there's specific rules of the way that it works.
Yes.
And then they go in, they talk about these things. But even though they're explaining how it works, as they're figuring out how it works, and as we see it, it's still confusing.
Yeah.
So basically what they do, I'm going to try and explain it the best I can. They make this like machine, they make like a bunch of really small ones or something like that, and they put them all in a grid, and that allows them to get inside it or whatever. So they go and they get like a storage container at like a U-Haul self-storage place. And what they have to do to make the time travel work is they have to turn on the machine, and then later in the day go inside the machine, and then they like go to sleep or whatever, and they wake up like a few hours later. But when they wake up, it's in the past when they've just turned on the machine, or sometime slightly after they've just turned on the machine.
Right. Because the scene that there's two scenes that always stick into my head, and the one when it comes to time travel is they turn the machine on and they spend the entire day in a hotel away because they have to like stay away from everybody, and then they go back to the storage unit but far away watching the storage unit, and they see themselves leave the storage unit.
Yeah, so basically, imagine that you woke up this morning, you turned on this machine, and then you checked into a hotel, and you didn't leave the hotel all day, so that way you don't interact with any other humans or like mess with the timeline or whatever. Then at the end of the day, you travel back to that morning again, and you live that same day a second time.
Yeah.
So when you're living that day the second time, you have some knowledge of the future. So they like figure out what stocks did well that day, and they gain some money and things like that. But then they start getting like a little more fast and loose with it, where they're like, oh, maybe I can go back and tell myself something or stuff like that. But the thing that gets really weird, and where the movie just goes totally off the rails in terms of like, I don't understand anymore what's happening, is you like find out at the end of the movie sort of that this system of time travel, and it's really important to understand the system of time travel, even though it's hard to understand. Basically, because you have to turn on the machine and then wait until the end of the day before getting back into the machine to go back into the past again, they found that you can like take one of the machines inside of another machine, and then they can like, they have like a backup machine that's been running for years or months or whatever. And so they like had turned on this backup one, and then they have been like, that's been running the whole time while they're going back and forth and like constantly reliving days multiple times. And then at the end they're like, oh, and then they went back in the backup machine to all the way in the beginning, but they brought machines with them and went back again. And it's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but apparently they also throughout the whole movie were recording all the conversations that they had every day. And then the guy's like listening to them back in an earpiece so he can say the words that he said on the time when he relived it the first time, but he's now living it a third time. And it's like, I don't know what's happening, but it seems like the movie doesn't care that I don't know, and it's plowing on anyway, and I kind of respect it.
Yeah. And it makes you go like, it's like the movie saying, we figured out how time travel would work.
Yeah, they know how it
And
works. We're not telling you, though.
It's not worth it. It's too fucking complicated. And you're just like, yeah, that looks exhausting. I don't want to have to worry about time travel.
They have that kind of attitude about it, and I respect it.
Yeah.
It's like we're just not going to take the time to baby the audience. We're going to just keep doing it. And I feel like it's on me to go Google how it works to figure out what happened in the movie.
It's amazing that they make you feel like it's on you to do homework, and usually that makes me feel like, well, fuck that movie then.
Yeah, usually that's exhausting. And
Yeah.
usually these intense scientific explanations are exhausting. That's the whole movie, and yet I'm fascinated.
You know what other movie does the exact same thing in terms of ends it with me going, what? I loved that, was Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
Where it just makes me go, it's on me to learn more now. Because I got to go figure out some of this stuff.
As confusing as Donnie Darko is, this movie is exponentially more confusing.
More confusing, and like, I wasn't comparing it to Donnie Darko in the sense of...
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
so you get the audience understands how confusing this movie is.
And know that you're not going to get the same, like, movie feel of Donnie Darko in the non-confusing parts of Primer. It's not like that. It does feel like a book report in some sense.
Yeah.
You know?
But I loved it.
I love it.
I really, really enjoyed.
It's so bizarre.
And I feel like it's because they never took the time to explain. I mean, they do, though. They take the time to explain it. I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like it's my fault because they did take so much time. And, like, what am I going to request? More time? Please take more of this time to explain how the time travel works? No, we're moving on.
I think that's why it feels like a tape you're not supposed to be... Like, you're like, if a smart man had found this tape, they would get it.
Yeah, like, imagine you had dug up a videotape, and on that, like, it just, like, in the woods somewhere, and you went and watched the videotape, and on it there was some guy explaining that he figured out how time travel worked. Like, I probably wouldn't be able to understand that tape.
Yeah.
And so watching Primer and not understanding it makes me feel like I actually am not understanding a real event.
It gives it more legitimacy.
It does.
Yeah.
And so then, like, I'm sure that there is an explanation for the whole narrative of, like, how this happens, but basically at the end of the movie, they, like, the two guys have differing opinions on, like, how much can you mess with the past, and how, like, can you talk to yourself, can you do this or whatever, and then they end up kind of breaking all those rules and going way back to the beginning again, and I'm not sure if they're trying to say, by the way, the whole time you've been watching this, it has actually been the guy from the far future reliving all of these events the way that they happened the first time, and he, like, kills his past self or whatever, and, like, there's just... And then at the very end, the one guy is like, I'm gonna now go, like, fly to Vegas or whatever, so I never have to interact with my other double again or whatever, and I'm just gonna go live off the grid and, like, go do something else now.
Because there's so many versions of yourself out there now, and I did get the impression that it's like, for this to work, eventually you're gonna have to start killing yourself off, and like you come out of there, you're probably going to cut somebody off and kill them, so that way you don't have the old people around that gave you the information before anyway. So it's a lot of like, which versions of yourself do you want around, and which ones do you want the body thrown into a closet, you know? And it's a mess. It's just a mess of stuff that it takes to do this right. But it's interesting that you say you compare it to like starting Apple, because it's like that stuff starts with such a kernel of idea and then gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger so quickly, and then you put time travel on it where it's like the bigger stuff happen and then you bring it back to make the bigger stuff happening quicker, and it's just like, it feels like what would happen if Apple was probably about time travel, where it's just like eventually this stuff is gonna get muddied, but then if you can bring that muddied stuff into the past to muddy this stuff up even earlier, it just gets really, really muddy.
Yeah.
You're tracking mud all over this place.
So we haven't even talked about like the climax of the plot. There's like it feels like a subplot, but I think that the whole reason that the guy in universe was doing all this stuff was to stop somebody from getting shot at a party.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, so there's a whole thing at the end where they're like, okay, the reason that they had like gone in the backup unit and gone back so many times or whatever was because there was like this event that just happened in their lives that they now realize time travel could help them fix. And it's this thing where like somebody's ex-boyfriend brings a shotgun to a party and like I guess he kills someone or something. So they like go back and relive the party again, but they've recorded the conversations on a tape, and he's listening to it in his ear. And he's like walking around the party and like having the same conversation with himself, not with himself, having the same conversation as the first time around.
Yeah.
To like relive these exact moments, and basically is playing like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
But you don't see it the way that we see Bill Murray walk around a Groundhog Day and have the same thing over and over again. We just, all of a sudden at the end, they're like, okay, and then he relived this day a million times until he eventually got it right and like did the perfect chain of events to stop this guy with the shotgun from doing whatever. Like, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what? This party has not been like a thing that we saw at the beginning or anything. Like, it's not like
That it makes sense why I don't remember that bit.
yeah, it's so bizarre, and I kind of want to not like the movie because of how shoddily put together it seems like it might be.
Yeah.
But when I was watching it, like I said, even in the beginning when I didn't know what was happening, I was like, I'm in. I'm so interested in what they're doing before I even knew that there was time travel.
Yeah, so weird that it gets you that way because
My point number 2, by the way, was time travel. Hell yeah! I know I skipped that one. I
knew it.
said 1 and 3, but it was. I have no idea what's going on. I'm interested. Time travel. Hell yeah! The coloring looks awesome.
I knew that I was like, no matter what, he's gonna like that this is a time travel movie.
When I downloaded it, like when I paid for it and started watching it, I was like, I hope I picked the right movie. I don't know what's going on in this. I literally like, and then when it got to the time travel, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the right movie,
Yeah.
but I still a little bit was like, maybe not. Am I watching some kind of weird documentary? Like, I don't know.
That would have been so funny if you watched the wrong
Watched the
movie
wrong movie.
and halfway through this podcast, you're like, I was like, that's not it, man.
I love time travel.
Yeah. But so glad that was
Love it.
the same. That's so much
Great
fun.
movie. Great.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's a great movie. Great movie for me, and great recommendation, and what a thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Primer.
Primer.
All
Well,
right.
let's move on to the final one of this podcast, my third movie, Airheads.
Tell me all about Airheads, because I just want to preface it. The reason I told you to watch it, I don't think that it's the best movie ever made or anything, but that is just a movie that for me, I had it on DVD as a kid, and I would watch it like weekly. I love that movie. I thought it was just the best thing in the world, and there's still, I feel like there's still a lot of people who haven't seen it. It's just a fun time.
I think Airheads, I had known the existence of it because I'd seen images of it, because like when you even just said Airheads, I'm like, oh yeah, Brendan Fraser's in there, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there probably is like a stigma of like what you probably think it's like versus what it is, because goddamn, it's really, really good.
You liked it?
I loved every
so
second of
glad.
it.
I'm so glad.
From the start to the finish, I was in. I didn't.
That makes me so
I'm
happy.
so glad. You're lucky that I changed my Adam Sandler.
You don't hate Adam Sandler anymore. Now you can watch Airheads.
Right. And I was like, I just had forgotten that Adam Sandler was going to be in this movie, and he's the best part. Even maybe
He's like
so good.
I think he's in it the least out of all of them. He's like the third guy.
Yeah.
In order of screen time.
But they all
Of the three of them.
they're all equally important to the movie, and they all like. He plays such an innocent. I mean, there's a non-innocent to his innocence, but like he plays such an innocent guy, dopey, but not in the regular dopey he does. He just does it really well.
Yeah,
But-
he's good.
and you just like you forget sometimes that he can like pull just regular good acting out.
Yeah.
Like he's being funny, but like it's not Adam Sandler.
It still is a little bit. Though.
A
Like,
little
he's still
bit.
doing funny voices, but he's not doing funny voices because he's a guy who does funny voices. He's doing funny voices because this guy's just like
Nervous.
insecure.
Yeah.
And so he has that funny voice.
And there's bits where like he's trying to be like the tough guy, and you're just like, I feel like Adam Sandler could pull the tough guy off much better than this guy can.
Yeah.
And this is Adam Sandler.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, I believe it. It's great.
Yeah.
But they're all really good because it's him, it's Brendan Fraser, and it's Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
They're all people I've met before for sure, especially Steve Buscemi, where I'm like, this guy is a loose cannon a bit.
Yeah.
I've met this fucker.
Yeah.
Where I don't hate him, but I'm just like, you gotta stop.
Yeah.
You gotta stop.
Yeah. Tell us what the movie's about.
Yeah, we always forget to do that part
Yeah.
when it's ours. So it's about a band. Those three guys are in a band, and it's a classic, like, we're trying to be rock stars, but we're really failing really bad. And the first scene of the movie, before I really get into it, incredible, one of the best opening scenes of a movie I've ever seen.
Yes.
And I might just be like too high on the movie at this point. But like it's Brendan Fraser walking into a business building that's like clearly like a studio, and he clearly also doesn't belong there, and he's like doing his best to sneak in but also not look like he's sneaking in, and he's doing fine, but he's done it so many times because you can tell people are like, oh, it's him again, catch him off on the second floor, and like and he's doing great at like beating them at their game anyway, and getting all the way to the studio executive he wants to talk to be like, listen to my demo, and the guy's like, no, I'm not going to listen to your demo.
And he talks to a record producer played by
Judd Nelson.
Yes.
Judd Nelson, who I didn't even fucking recognize at first.
Because he plays like just this slimy businessman.
Square, like it's and he's great. And they decide that they're gonna do their final, like, we're gonna get into this like radio station, and we're gonna force them. We're just gonna be like, please play our demo on the radio, because like that's what other bands are doing. Once it gets played on the radio, everything works out. So they go into this, they sneak into the radio station. Great scene of them breaking in, like with stopping the door with the backpack. Love that whole thing. And I didn't even know they brought what they bring, but they get into the radio station. The disc jockey's like, who the fuck are you guys? He starts to like listen to them a little bit. Then like the head of the radio station comes in, and he's like, we're not having this, like, turn this off. And he's like, come on, these guys broke in, we might as well give them a little bit of time, let's just talk to them. And then when they're like, it's not gonna happen, they take out their fucking guns, because they have guns. But at the start, like earlier on in the movie, they've established that they have these fake squirt guns that look like real guns that they love to put hot sauce in to spray into people's eyes. And I didn't really catch, I don't know if they tell you or not, that they bring those guns with them.
I think they do. I think they do, but I'm not 100% sure. But like that's what's in the bags that they have, right? But basically the Steve Buscemi's character, they're all man children in different ways.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler's a pool cleaner. Steve Buscemi is a guy that works in a toy store, and then
that's right.
Brendan Fraser is like the front man. He's like, all I do all day is like, he like lives off his girlfriend's dime and just tries to get the band going.
And he will do that kind of like, you know, if you weren't late for rehearsals because you were cleaning some square's pool, you know, he's like, you're doing some dumb job when you should be devoted to the band. So he doesn't have a real job because he's the one mostly devoted to the band, you know? Right.
And so the Steve Buscemi's character works in a toy store, and his whole house is just full of toys. Like, he's got like Stretch Armstrong and like classic toys and stuff. And he's like, check out these plastic guns I had. They're water pistols, but they got taken out of commission because they're too realistic. And you can put water in them. And then he's like, I put pepper sauce in them.
And they use those guns to hold up the entire radio station and make them play their thing. And the whole movie
so realistic.
This because like they try to play the demo, but then the demo on reels, and so then they're like, we got to find a new version of the demo. We got to do this. We got to do that.
And they're stuck in the radio station now because they have hostages.
Yes.
And they're like, well, we're in this deep. We have to at least get the play, and then we'll figure out what to do after that. But like, we already are like holding up this radio station.
So it becomes an entire movie of they have the entire radio station hostage. The cops are out there. The crowd gets bigger and bigger throughout the movie, and it becomes a situation where the cops are the bad guys because everyone outside of the place is listening to the radio station, and they're on this band's side. They're like, fuck the man. Yeah. Let's listen to these people's song. They create a fan base.
Yeah. And when over the course of a few hours while they're in the radio station, it just becomes like a national event. Like people are like, let's hear this band. They have this single and they want it played, and we haven't heard it yet. Yeah, the Lone Rangers. It's like the Lone Gunmen.
Yeah, you can't plural the Lone Rangers, can you?
There's 3 of you. You're not exactly lone.
And there's so many, like, it's so wild and wacky, but then there'll be one bit where I'm like, it's still, not to say it's not wild and wacky, but there'll be one comedic bit that's just like, that goes a little above and beyond. For some reason, it just hits me in that was fucking genius. Yeah. And it's like, when he's depressed and he's eating a burrito and he peppers the
Yes.
burrito with the gun.
I love that.
What a moment.
It's like sad music,
Yeah.
and he's sitting there eating the burrito and just it just squirts.
And it's at that point, I think, already where they've been outed, I think, at that point, that the guns aren't real.
Well, that's the thing, is that at a certain point in the movie, the people inside the radio station who are being held hostage find out that the guns aren't real, but they still don't, like, go outside because they're on the band's side, too.
Some of them do.
Some of them.
And then want back in.
Yes. Yeah,
One guy runs out when he finds out the guns aren't fake, and then it later wants back in. They're like, no dice, dude. And he's like, come on, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
But the biggest standout for me was when a real gun gets involved. And the DJ picks up the real gun and has a real gun in his hand, and Brendan Fraser goes like this.
Puts his hands up.
And the reaction of just...
He's like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing this. You have it.
No way.
Yeah.
You think I'm going to use this gun? No. And just gives it to Brendan Fraser.
Yeah,
And he's like, we're back where we were.
It's awesome. It's so cool. But you haven't even talked about the Die Hard of it all.
You know, my least favorite part of the movie
Really?
is I'm not a huge fan of like slapstick for the sake of it, I guess, when other things were going on. And so we just kept cutting to Kramer, who
Michael Richards.
Michael Richards works
played
at the
Kramer.
studio, is like somewhere off when the first like guns come out. So like he's like hiding and crawling through the vents trying to get to a phone to call the military guy out there, ends up becoming the military's eyes and ears. They're
the SWAT team or whatever.
they give him a gun to go back in there to like take him down. And for the first half of that movie, it's just cutting back to him sneaking around. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I don't know what's going on. It's just a way to let him flex his physical comedy. Then once he gets more integral to the plot, I was like, okay, I don't hate this as much because there's like things going on. They just don't cut back so often, because then it's got that not buts and therefores anymore. It's just ands, and then he falls this way. Then we'll cut back to him later when he's in the vents and he'll fall this way. And then we'll cut back to him later. But then once they finally get to, it's still like goofy, funny slapstick, but he's trying to get the phone. He's talking on the phone. You're like, see, the scene is moving forward while that's going on. Before, it's just him goofing off, and I was like annoyed every time.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. But it does.
But then it comes to fruition, and I forgive it almost completely.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, it brings the other gun in. It brings a lot of pieces to it.
I love the part where he tries to get the phone because he's hanging out of the vents.
Yeah.
Trying to reach a phone that's on somebody's desk.
I always get a little uncomfortable when Michael Richards is in anything but Seinfeld, because I'm like, I get it. They hired Kramer to be Kramer.
Yeah.
And like when he's like, it's not a good movie, but like when I was a kid, when I first got into Weird Al, I watched Weird Al's movie UHF.
UHF, yeah.
And he just plays like a mentally challenged janitor, who's like clearly like the bit is that he's mentally challenged and dumb and stupid, and like he's fully playing someone like that. And so like this, I was like, okay, I get it. Kramer's running through the vents or whatever. So it always feels a little like that higher of let's get him to do his thing. But it turned out fine. So like that part.
That makes sense.
But it wasn't like, it was definitely like can we get back to my favorite part, please? Every time it was like, but when he got involved in the main story with everybody else, then I was like, this makes sense to me why they did this, It's really good. It's a good time. It's just like, and so that to me is a 5-star or 5 and then a
5-star and
a like.
That's great.
Like I was just, and then there's so the scene of the DJ giving the gun is comedic gold. The way he does that, the delivery of just the face, comedic gold. But then truly the cop standoff with Adam Sandler.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
He like. They go out of a door and there's a cop there, so they close it. Yeah. They're like, we got to figure out what's going on, and their van is right out there. It's just one cop squad car, their van. So Adam Sandler then goes out, and the cop gets out of his car, and they're just kind of staring at each other. And Adam Sandler will walk 2 steps, and the cop will walk 2 steps, and he's like walking towards his van, like being like, how far can I get to my van before this guy's going to stop me?
Yeah,
and I'll walk 3 more steps, and he'll walk 3 more steps. Walk 3 steps backwards, he'll walk 3 steps backwards.
He does the robot a little bit.
Oh yeah, then he does like
Yeah, just
And then the guy goes for him and he runs back.
the guy like reaches for his gun.
Yeah.
He runs. He like bangs on the door. He's like, "Let me back in."
I don't want to go to jail, man.
Yeah, what a fun movie.
It's so good. And yeah, it's Brendan Fraser is a delight.
And it's just a fun movie, you know. It doesn't have that much to say, but it's very much.
It does accidentally, I think. So, like, I don't know if they're going for it, but it does just have like a fun artist versus the establishment.
Oh, and that's that's pretty overt because it's like
Yeah.
we just want the chance to show our art, our song,
Yeah.
whatever, and the big mean record labels won't give us a chance, and the radio station won't give us a chance.
And when he's got
we
the
just
gun
start-
in his hand and he's yelling about that stuff, it's real
he's
you know.
honestly really frustrated in the system.
And I
know?
can see a lot of artists, even not just music artists, being like, that's very frustrating. That's what I'm going through every day. Is it's hard that you have it's this big rat race, but you're also doing creative work, and also there's tastemakers that don't know about art. The tastemakers are the people making these decisions, and they're not the people that probably should. Like there's that line when they're like they start playing really good music because they're like, well, if we own this station for the time being, might as well play some good hits.
Yeah, the guys who are holding up the station are like, well, we might as well play what we want to hear for a change.
Yeah.
And then people are like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, people love it. They're like, oh, yeah, these guys are great.
And they're getting call-ins from the people out there.
They're getting call-ins from people who are outside the building in their car.
It's like, this is great, that's great. And they're like, you got all these great songs, and they're like, if they're so great, then why don't they ever chart? Because you don't play them.
Yeah.
And it's like,
kinda,
it makes sense. Like you have that, like, yeah,
it's the guy who owns the radio station who's deciding what gets played on the radio, being like, well, those songs aren't popular.
Yeah, it's like, they won't be if you don't play them.
Yeah, you're the one. You're
you
a
guys
huge
make them
influence.
popular.
Yeah.
You make songs popular.
You kind of have a duty to the artist.
Yeah.
And you're failing at that duty, and then you're saying, well, this isn't making money. We're switching to the smooth jazz or whatever, where they're like, oh, well, you know, you're selling out, whatever, blah blah blah.
And we usually do spoilers, and it's not like it's a big spoiler, but I'm not going to talk about the very end because it's just a satisfying ending.
Yeah,
But it's also, you don't need to know it to, I think, if you're going to like this movie, you already have all the information you need. We don't even really need to talk about the ending, but it's satisfying. It's really good.
And that is a movie with a great soundtrack too.
Yeah.
It's got like White Zombie and stuff, and like other like actual songs throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
But then like their single is good.
And they're not afraid to be really good, a really good movie, and then in a second hand be just a really dumb, silly thing, and bring weird characters in sometimes. When they bring the military guy in, I love him. He's so
right.
good because his delivery's so, even when he shows up and he's not being an offensive character yet, he's still playing it a little unhinged.
Oh, he's
And not even like a
unhinged.
violently unhinged, just like this guy's got like, I don't know what this guy's weird, and I love it.
Yeah. He's not my favorite, but I love the movie, so I love every part of it at least a little bit.
And then Ernie Hudson, is that his name? Who plays the main cop outside?
Oh my God, that is Ernie Hudson. You're right.
He's
You're
awesome.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, Chris Farley.
Oh, I forgot.
When they
Chris
do
Farley,
the Chris Farley reveal, incredible reveal, because they knew what they were doing. Chris Farley already has a reputation at this point, I feel. So then when he just comes into frame as the second cop, and he's not funny in the scene at all, really, he kind of plays the movie straight. I mean, he's being a little silly,
he
but like
rips somebody's nipple ring off.
But he out of all the goofy things he does, that's the most like badass, not goofy.
Yeah.
Because like suddenly you're like, oh, this pushover cop's about to get really pushed over, and then he pulls out this badass, and that's where that scene ends.
Yeah.
And then we never hear from him again until he's back on the scene.
Right.
Like, so you're just like, I don't know. They're not fully doing a Chris Farley anywhere with Chris Farley, and I love it because he shows up as a cop. You're like, oh no, Chris Farley's here. And then he kind of is like playing it by the book in terms of being like a good cop.
He is, but he still has the mannerisms and like the quick movements of Chris Farley.
But not
stuff.
too much either. He's just
it's
playing.
Just how he talks.
He's just being overeager. He's just an overeager new cop that's playing things by the book and not being a dirty cop for the most part. People are teaching him to try to be a dirty cop.
Yeah.
Because Ernie Hudson's like, I need you to do this. He's like, well, actually, because of, and he's like, I don't care what that says. You're going to learn real fast that, to uphold the law, you have to be quick thinker and do some things, you know, and you're just
You gotta
like,
improvise.
yeah, you're gotta improvise, and you're like, a cab, fantastic. And I'm just so glad that he doesn't overshadow anything. He doesn't, I don't know. For some reason, I really like Chris Farley's presence being not very Chris Farley compared to what his usual presence is. It was just a nice touch.
The exact opposite problem you have with Michael Richards. They hired Kramer to be Kramer, and he's just Kramer.
Yes.
Not entirely, but...
and
yeah.
when he's actually important to the story, like, I don't mind it as much. It's more when it's just like, this feels like we're watching the Pikachu short during the Mewtwo movie instead of the beginning of it. We should have just watched the Pikachu short before this. But yeah, great movie.
I'm so glad.
I had a lot of fun with it, and it was that really gave me a lift of my spirits this weekend for...
I love that.
Each time I was getting into the movie, I was like, I might like this movie more if I wasn't doing so bad. And this movie, I was like, it doesn't matter how bad I'm doing. This movie's cutting through that. This movie
I'm going to watch
is still good.
Stairheads next time I'm depressed.
Yeah, it was really good.
That's great.
And just fun. And just made me, I don't know, I didn't think too hard about anything. We were just having fun.
Yeah. Go see Airheads.
Yeah.
Watch it. It's good.
But, yeah, we got anything else we need to talk about before we just kind of start wrapping things up?
You know what? I feel like this podcast went really, really well. And I think that I don't want to spend too much time doing anything else. I want to be done pretty quick, but I am going to just mention a few things. For all you audio listeners out there, Mriting Wonday has a new YouTube channel. If you're a video watcherer, you're already watching it on there. YouTube.com/Mriting Wonday. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's where it is. Or at Mriting Wonday, as they're doing it now. So all the old podcasts are going to be up on there, and this one. We're also doing a bunch of YouTube shorts of little clips from the podcast.
Lots of highlights out there, hopefully very soon, and already there's some. And
lastly, I wanted to go over a couple comments that we got on not the last video, because we didn't really do the audience questions last video since it was the one with the four of us. Yeah. But the one before that was the animation one.
Yes.
We got a comment from Will Hargreaves saying that his top 4 are Wall-E, Iron Giant, and Henry Selick's Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. And his number 1 is The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2.
Wow.
Which I didn't know was a thing. Right, that sounds cool.
Just a good Batman.
And he says, it seems impossible that the animation is so slick and yet also such a faithful rendition of Miller's original illustrations, and voice performances are unbelievably compelling. That sounds cool.
I've heard some amazing things about animated Batman properties and how, like, depending on the source, they just, like, they're some of the best renditions of Batman. Like, the original animated series is an incredible rendition, apparently. So I
remember watching it a little bit as a kid. I don't remember. My brother was really into it. I didn't watch it as much. James Fowler says, "Oh man, why can't it be one day already?" Sad face.
Yeah, you telling
me. I agree.
Yeah.
And then Dan.
Well, thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it. We enjoy all the love coming to the podcast. There's a lot more than I would have anticipated, especially this early on. We're just seeing a lot of love for it. Makes us feel good inside.
It really does make us feel good. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We love you all. Mwah.
All right, now get fucked.
Yeah. Okay.